Hey everyone, it's been a long time, hasn't it? I'm sorry this isn't a game review, but unfortunately I get a ton of writer's block, so I'm gonna settle on doing a top 10 video in the meantime. Hopefully this can tide over a lot of you for a while. The Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive if you are from the UK, I found to be a bit of an underdog system. I seem to see a lot of people talk more about the Super Nintendo than the Sega Genesis. Sure, the Super Nintendo had its share of platformers, fighting games, RPGs, and racing games, but that doesn't mean the Genesis didn't have those as well. If I'm gonna be honest, the Super Nintendo is obviously one of my top favorite systems, but I want to give some love to the Genesis for once, since they deserve it for their hard work back in the 90s trying to compete with other game companies. Let's start, shall we? Here are my top 10 favorite Sega Genesis games. Number 10. Home Alone. If you haven't seen Home Alone yet, then you should do yourself a favor and buy the movie off Amazon. Out of all the Home Alone games I have played, this seems to be the only good game adaptation of the famous John Hughes movie. You start out on a sled and have to go to different houses that the wet bandits try to rob. Each house, you lay down traps for Harry and Marv to get hurt from, and the more they are hurt, the more the pain meter goes up. If you can manage to get the pain meter all the way, they will give up and move on to the next house. You can also build new weapons with items you collect in the game, since using weapons against the bandits will help that pain meter go down as well. Compared to the other Home Alone games, this feels more like an actual Home Alone game than the ones on NES and Super Nintendo. Number 9. Desert Demolition. Some people might not like this one, but I happen to enjoy it for what it is. It is based off the Looney Tunes characters Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, who happen to be both playable in this game. The game is supposedly a race to gain the title of Acme President, and both Wile E. and Roadrunner must try to reach the end. When you play as the Coyote, it almost feels kind of sluggish, but that is kind of expected due to how the character is in the cartoons. You can enter Acme boxes and gain all sorts of Acme branded gadgets, which surprisingly work for him this time. With Roadrunner, the game totally feels like Sonic the Hedgehog, like seriously. When you are the Roadrunner, Birdseed are your health pickups. This game feels a lot easier when playing as the Roadrunner, while the Coyote felt more difficult to control. If you are a fan of the Roadrunner cartoons, maybe give this game a test run and judge for yourself. Number 8. The Great Circus Mystery. If you are familiar with the Magical Quest games on the Super Nintendo, then you might recognize Great Circus Mystery as the second game in the series. This, as far as I know, is the only Genesis port of a Magical Quest game, and boy, is it ever good. It is a platformer adventure game, with Mickey and Minnie as playable characters. Throughout the game, you gain different outfits with new abilities which are super helpful depending on the situation. The level environments are kind of cool, and some of the enemies and bosses are designed to each level's theme. This is a pretty basic Disney-themed platformer game, not really much else to say. Number 7. Earthworm Jim. Do I really need to discuss this? Earthworm Jim happens to be one of the top-selling games for the system, and rightfully so. A majority of people prefer the Genesis version of this over the Super Nintendo edition, and I can definitely understand why. I think the main reason was for the music, since it sounded a lot better on the Genesis than on the Super Nintendo. Anyways, this is a run-and-gun game, which sounds pretty basic, right? Well, the character is basically an earthworm inside of a super suit, which makes him able to do things that no normal earthworm should be able to do. I think what this game has going for it is some of the dark and appealing visuals, which are beautiful to look at. There was also another version of this game on the Sega CD, but forget about it unless you want to pay an arm and a leg for it. Most recently, I believe, Earthworm Jim was also ported to the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 as Earthworm Jim HD, but as of now, it's been removed from the storefronts. Pretty fun game, but also difficult at times. Give it a try if the opportunity ever comes. Number 6. Sonic 3D Blast. If you watched my Sonic Mega Collection Plus review, you'll know that this is a game that was featured on that collection. It was developed by Traveler's Tales, and their hard work really shows here. You control Sonic the Hedgehog in a 3D perspective, rescuing Flickies and guiding them through giant rings. For a game in 3D, it controls pretty okay on a Sega Genesis controller, despite some of it being slippery at times. I still like how impressive the 3D is on the bonus stages. They really took the effort to make it this good on 16-bit hardware. If you want to see some of the really hard work that was put into this game, go check out Game Hut on YouTube. This channel is run by John Burton, the founder of Traveler's Tales. Number 5. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Hyperstone Heist. I think you will notice that this is another port of a Super Nintendo game, Turtles in Time. Obviously, it plays just like Turtles in Time. Classic beat-em-up action. You have a choice of the 4 turtles: Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael. The main difference with Hyperstone Heist is that there is no time travel levels involved. It is just a quest to go to the Technodrome to stop Shredder and the power of the Hyperstone he possesses. The bosses you face are Leatherhead, Rocksteady, Tatsu, Baxter Stockman, Krang, and of course, the Shredder. The music is mostly copied from Turtles in Time, but it sounds really good on the Yamaha sound chip. This is another good classic Konami game, despite the company being crap now. Number 4. Castlevania Bloodlines. Yes, another good old Konami game. Castlevania on the Sega Genesis is just like the classic Castlevania games, whipping monsters and using sub-weapons. Of course, nothing can beat Super Castlevania 4 on the Super Nintendo, but for Genesis owners, this was just as good. You have the choice to pick between John Morris and Eric Lecard. John Morris has the classic whip, while Eric has a spear. I almost always pick John Morris because, of course, it is not a Castlevania game without the whip. Compared to Super Castlevania 4, you are now limited to a few directions for whipping, which makes sense due to the D-pad of the Genesis controller. And because it is a Castlevania game, it is not without its intense difficulty. This is a Castlevania game that I can definitely recommend to anyone for some basic Castlevania action. Number 3. Disney's Aladdin. Along with Earthworm Jim, this is another top fan favorite Genesis game. Based off the Disney movie Aladdin from 1992, Virgin Games made an instant masterpiece for the 16-bit system. The animations are very fluid and really look like they were hand-drawn from the movie. This obviously makes sense since the staff working on this game hired the help of the animators from the movie. This game, compared with the Super Nintendo version by Capcom, is day and night. I can definitely see why people love this game over the Super Nintendo edition, but I found them to be two separate beasts, both great in their own rights. This game, along with The Lion King, was recently re-released on a 2-game pack for modern game consoles and PC, which shows how popular this game was. If you haven't played this yet, then what are you waiting for? Number 2. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. I have said this before, and I will say it again. This is one of my absolute favorite puzzle games to play on the Sega Genesis, way ahead of Columns. It is basically Puyo Puyo with characters from the Sonic cartoon series. You must make chains and combos with 4 or more Puyo pieces, dropping garbage on the opponent's side and filling up their side until no more pieces can be dropped. A pretty basic puzzle game, which is something that I admire. The music is also something I enjoy listening to. It kind of sets the mood for your progression through the game, getting faster and more menacing. Nothing really much else to say. I'm just a fan of this kind of basic puzzle genre. Now, before I get to number 1, here are a few honorable mentions. And now, my number 1 favorite Sega Genesis game. Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Yes, I count both of these as one game, so call me a cheater if you want. Yes, I chose this over Sonic 2. Why? Well, look how many levels there are. This game, as far as I know, has probably the most levels in any Sonic game ever. You can play as Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, which is especially awesome because you can play as Knuckles in the Sonic 3 levels. The level design and themes are really well done in this game. I don't really know how to explain it, it just feels like they were meant to be in these games. I also think the one thing that Sonic 2 will never have is this awesome music. If anyone doesn't know by now, Michael Jackson worked on the music for this game and it kinda shows. But because of this, unfortunately, the game hasn't been re-released in a long time due to the reputation of a famous pop singer, which means it might be a very long time before this game ever gets a re-release. I hope that one day, Sega can finally be able to re-release this on modern day systems for everyone to be able to enjoy. Well, that was my top 10 favorite Sega Genesis games. If you have any favorite Genesis games, please let me know in the comments. And if you liked the video, please click the like button. Thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing.